Okay, sir, you can start now. It's live.
Very good evening, one and all. Today, the remaining portions with regarding to GST e-filing we would be discussing. Further, some of those basic concepts regarding EPF and ESI also we would be mentioning. Afterwards, we would be giving on to as usual question and answer session. We would be clarify any further doubts right from the day of initiation till the final discussion. Any doubts we would be discussing. So yesterday we discussed filing with pertaining to GSTR 1, GSTR 2, A, GSTR 2B, GSTR 3B, as well as IMS sort of things we were discussing. And we had discussed about various free ledgers also. Afterwards, regular scheme, QRMP scheme also we were discussing. After those regular return submitters, we are now going to begin with the return applicable for a composition taxable person. For that sake, 3 months they would be required to pay via Challan CMT 08, and annually they would be requiring to submit a return under a GSTR 4. So these are the two returns that composition taxable person is required to submit. First one with regarding to the quarterly payment via Challan CMT 08 and quarterly returns under GST or form number 4. So these two procedures, quarterly basis payment and yearly wise returns, are the two return submission procedures that the composition dealers are required to do. So my dear friends, kindly note type two type of compliance proceedings that composition person shall have to do: quarterly basis payment CMP 08 and this returns in GSTR 4 annual basis. Everybody kindly do type. Everybody do type. Quarterly payment, annually return submission. Yes. So here for a composition dealer, I have logged in. And here you may see under challan created column, various challans has been generated. And it would be in this format. To download also, you may see the challan. So the challan is visible. This is the challan that on quarterly basis that you would be required to pay. This is the challan. Challan comprises of CPIN, identification number, date of deposit, time of deposit, e-scroll number, SIN, name of the bank, BRN, GST number, email ID, mobile number, all those things it would be there. So this is the way the challan would look like. You would be required to make the payments through this create challan option. So this way you can create the challan and you can make the payment also through your net banking facilities, etc. And finally, on annual basis, if you want to submit the returns, you may see this is a CMP 08, the form that has to be submitted for a quarterly payment of taxes. Here this is already filed sort of this thing. After creating challan, you would be required to do this CMP 08. This is how it would be done with. For 24-25, you see here also CMP 08 is that this thing, and GSTR 4A, you may see the credit appearing in this composition persons ledger, just as if you are 2A in case of regular tax persons. Here it would be GSTR 4A. In this way, two things that you would be required to do. First, this CMP 08, and next with regarding to this GSTR 4. So this is how the returns for composition person would be done. GST CMP 08 along with 4. So with this, what is CGST? CGST, Central GST. Susmita Ghosh worked out within. G. Simon have given a beautiful narration with regarding the composition taxable person system. Okay, so this is how both of those returns would be for your kind information. Now, after submitting these returns, regular return and all, whether there is any scope for revision of returns. If you see, you may be knowing under income tax, we have submitted some returns and some errors crept in. you would be required to rectify those errors, mistakes. You can file revised return, rectification return. You can update the returns, etc. But under GST, whether we are having that facility to file a rectification return, revision return, if you ask, the answer is no. We cannot revise the return. You cannot rectify the return. Rather, rectification can be done in subsequent return. So 3 columns you may see: no revision, no rectification, rectification in subsequent return. Rectification in subsequent return means, suppose this month total turnover was 1 lakh, but you made a mistake and you declared only for say 60,000 rupees. So whether you can rectify this month return and you can re-edit it that to be 1 lakh rupees, answer is no. The thing that you can do is you can put that figure 40,000 rectification. Suppose this month you are having 80,000 rupees turnover, that 80,000 plus missed 40,000 rupees, 1,20,000 rupees can be shown in this month as a returned figure. So in that way, in subsequent return, you can rectify your errors. Same way, suppose you had mistakenly given 1 lakh instead of 80,000, 20,000 extra you have given, that can be edited in subsequent returns. So in this way, you can do with this many what you call rectifications in subsequent return. Current year return sort of rectification is not possible. So as if in income tax, you cannot revise, you cannot rectify, you cannot update the return. In subsequent returns, you can add or delete those figures with respect to the subsequent return period transactions, and you can adjust those figures. That's it. So now, my dear friends, you all kindly do type these 3 points. Revision of return, rectification or revision of return not possible. Rectification in subsequent period can be done. That too, that month figure plus or minus the actual figure you would be required to do with. So 30th day of November of next year, or actual filing of annual return, whichever comes earlier within this period, you would be required to revise the return also, rectify that mistake also. So now kindly do type these 3 points along with due date. Everyone, please. Revision of return not possible. Hope you are all understanding the concept that I am trying to deliver with. Everybody kindly to type composition delays, not composition delays, Simon madam. The thing is, for the normal returns that we have submitted, not only pertaining to composition delays, all returns. For regular returns, every return cannot be revised, it cannot be rectified. Only in subsequent period you can do it. This is not only confined to composition. For all. Hey, I do hope everybody is typing. Please do try to type it. Try to understand this thing. This is not confining to composition. Every sort of return could be under this manner only. So GSM is a boy. Okay. Sorry again. Revision and rectification. Revision means you can revise the entire this thing. Rectification means only mistake can be done with. There's a difference between revision and rectification. Technically, no difference. In result, no difference. But legally, some differences are there. Yes, now with this rectification errors is over. Now you may see all these payment process, all these types of ledgers, everything we had familiarized, electronic liability register, electronic cash ledger, electronic credit ledger, everything. The previous session we had already discussed. Electronic cash ledger, how it would be, I have already shown you. The payment can be made through internet banking, debit card, credit card, UPI, NEFT, RTGS, IMPBS, and also over the counter limit of 10,000 rupees is there. And major and minor payment. This many heads under IGST, CGST, SCST, and cess are there. Various taxes, interest, penalty, fee, others were there. All those things we had already discussed. And that chronology, how to make that payment of GST, IGST through IGST, CGST, all these things we have already covered. Then in that electronic liability register, how to make the payment. I had shown you part A and part B. Part A with regarding to self-declared liability and part B with regarding to this department created liability. So the order of discharge, all the dues with regarding to previous tax period, you have to pay the payment. All due meaning your declared liability. First you have to pay. Second, all dues related to current tax period. First you have to pay last period taxes. Then this period taxes you have to pay. Then only any amount found by the department, you would be required to make the payment. So first you would be required to make the payment of current period, this thing. Afterwards, you would be required to pay the departmental sort of demands. Debit and credit, everything we have already discussed. Interest on delayed payment, I was mentioning in 3B. This month delay, next month 3B, it would be appearing. The rate of interest would be 18%. The rate of interest would be 18%. And today we have already seen this composition person returns, GSTR 4 as well as CMP 08. GSTR 4 is the annual return that we would be required to submit. 30th of April is the last date for filing GSTR 4. CMP 08 quarterly payment of taxes, how to do it and all we have already seen. Kindly do refer the date of payment also. This month, this quarter's tax has to be paid in 18th of month of succeeding quarter, meaning April, May, June, July 18th, July, August, September, October 18th, October, November, December, January 18th. In that way, you would be required to make the payment under CMP 08. GSTR 4 annual return that you would be required to submit on annual basis. 30th day of April, you would be required to submit it. So in this way, you would be required to submit two forms returns, GST CMP 08 as well as GSTR 4 are the two things that we would be required to submit as a composition dealer. So this thing already we have discussed. Due date also kindly do note on with. GSTR 4A also I was mentioning. It is nothing but just as if GSTR 2A, there you would be eligible to get that credit, but for a composition dealer, now ITC is eligible. Anyhow, it would be appearing in this GST form, GSTR 4A. Now comes another types of returns. Kindly do pay your attention. Some miscellaneous returns we are going to discuss now. For that time's sake, GSTR 5 is the returns that NRTPs, non-resident taxable persons, would be required to submit. So everybody kindly do type GSTR 5 NRTP. Everybody do type GSTR 5 NRTP. GSTR 5 NRTP. Yes, GSTR 5 NRTP, non-resident taxable person. When they would be required to file it, already we have mentioned this NRTP as well as CTP would be required to make the tax payment in advance. Before their supply, they would be required to make the payment at least 5 days before the actual date of doing business. They would be required to get registered and make the payment in advance. So what are all these things that they would be required to do in GSTR 5, both inward as well as outward supply, they would be required to do. They are not eligible to avail input tax credit on any purchases within India other than with regarding to import of goods. Frequency for submitting this GSTR 5 is on a monthly basis. Monthly basis, they would be required to submit this GSTR 5, and the due date for filing the return is within 13 days after the end of calendar month, or within 7 days after the last day of validation period, because we were mentioning maximum 90 days would be allotted for their registration. So if that day expires sooner, within 7 days from the last date of validity of those period, they would be required to submit the returns. And moreover, an NRTP would not be required to file annual return in form number 9. So this is what about GSTR 5. Only passing reference regarding all these returns, so I am not practically indulging on to those returns. GSTR 5 NRP returns and NRTP returns. Now comes TDS. So this TDS you have to distinct from income tax TDS. Income tax TDS is different. The GST TDS is different. Here income tax TDS, GSTR TDS means on certain situations at the time of making payment to the supplier, the recipient is required to deduct a certain percentage of TDS, and that has to be submitted, and that has to be paid to the government, and returns has to be submitted. Then only the supplier will be getting the credit. So in that way, the government departments at the time of receiving any goods or services from a single supplier, more than 2.5 lakh rupees, more than 2.5 lakh rupees if you are getting from a supplier, then you would be required to get deduct rather 2% TDS on such amount while making payment to the suppliers. Suppose, say for example, revenue department building is been air conditioned, and that department purchases 5 air conditioners from a shop, and if total amount is more than 2.5 lakhs, suppose it is 3 lakh rupees, instead of giving 3 lakh rupees to that supplier, they would be deducting 2% towards TDS. So in that way, TDS has to be deducted in governmental transactions. Recent notification, apart from the government agencies, while purchasing various minerals, scrap, etc., various metal scraps, the purchaser would be required to deduct TDS at the rate of 2%. So those situations wherein TDS are being deducted, then at those situations, those TDS deductees would be required to submit their returns in form number GSTR 7. So GSTR 7 is the form required to be submitted by those deductees. So this is how that GSTR 7 is submitted on monthly basis. 10th of next month succeeding, you would be required to submit this GSTR 7, and this credit TDS would be reflected in supplier's TDS sort of this thing, which can be directly credited to electronic cash ledger. It can be credited to electronic cash ledger. So in this way, this GSTR 7 form is there for those who are deducted TDS. Now, other than this 5, 7, some miscellaneous forms I'm trying to tell you, before which kindly do type this GSTR 7 TDS return to be submitted before 10th. I was mentioning you TDS deductors, government in some situations, as well as purchases of certain minerals. Everybody do type who are required to deduct TDS and TDS deductors to submit GSTR 7. Sanjay, I would tell you again. Government or such sort of deductors at the time of purchase or inward supply of those goods or services would be required to deduct the TDS, and that TDS has to be submitted and the returns has to be submitted in GSTR 7. Afterwards, the receivers TDS TCS column, it would be reflected. After accepting the same, it would credit to their cash ledger. That can be used for making their tax payment in the subsequent months. Is it clear? Same principle in income tax, but here it is a different tax. On certain commodities or services only this TDS is applicable. Earlier it was only for government. Now for purchases of certain minerals, scrap, certain minerals scrap only, this TDS is there. But anyhow, you should know about this TDS return in GSTR 7. Yes. After this GSTR 7, I am moving on to next types of returns. This is first return in GSTR 10. First return meaning when you take the registration, not a voluntary registration, compulsory registration for the first time, the return that you are going to submit for the first time with those particulars of opening stock, those credits, everything would be termed to be as this GSTR 10 return, first return it is. Then electronic commerce operator. There are two types of electronic commerce operator transactions, section 95 transactions and TCS transaction. So in case wherein if you are having those 95 TCS transactions, 2% TCS has to be collected other than those situations wherein 95 is applicable. So electronic commerce operator would be collecting 2% extra. Suppose you are selling through Flipkart, Amazon, etc. Then the electronic commerce operator would be collecting 2% from the business participant. So the business participant, by collecting that 2%, would be making the payment to that business participant, just as if the TDS is credited to their cash ledger. This would also reflect to your TDS TCS column. Afterwards to the cash ledger it would come. So in this way, the e-commerce operators would be required to collect the taxes and submit the returns in GSTR 8. So as in GSTR 7, for TDS deductors, for TCS collectors, e-commerce operators, they would be required to submit returns in this form. GSTR 10. So GSTR 10 is for TCS, e-commerce operators, etc. would be required to do this returns. And the due date is before 10th of next month. So everybody kindly do type this return GSTR 8 for TCS. I don't see so many people giving the answers. I do encourage them to do it. Kindly to respond, kindly to be active, kindly to cooperate. GSTR 10 e-commerce operator. Oh, GSTR 8 e-commerce operator, GSTR 10 first return. Okay, now afterwards, final return. Final return again in GSTR 10 that you would be required to submit. Final return also in Form 10. Final return that you have to submit after cancelling your registration. Once you cancel your registration, then also the return submission procedure doesn't comes to an end. You would be required to submit final return also. Final return also you would be required to submit all those particulars with regarding to the stock in hand, how you transferred it, electronic credit ledger balance, every other particulars you would be required to file in this final return. You have to file the final return within 3 months from the date of cancellation. So from the date of cancellation of registration, you would be required to submit this GSTR 10 within 3 months from the date of cancellation. So this is what this return is all about with regarding to final return after cancellation of your registration. Then comes annual return. That has to be submitted on annual basis. Annual basis. So there are 3 types of forms. GSTR 9 for regular persons, 9A for composition taxable person, 9B for electronic commerce operator. So there are 3 forms for submitting your annual return. GSTR 9, 9A and 9B. 9A for regular persons, 9A for a composition person, 9B for electronic commerce operator, but that 9B form is not now there. 9A is not also a mandatory form. Who are required to submit annual returns? Annual return has to be submitted by those persons who are having total turnover, aggregate turnover more than 2 crores in the year. So if you are having aggregate turnover more than 2 crore, then you would be required to submit annual return mandatorily. But if you are having turnover less than 2 crore also, you can voluntarily submit this annual return, provided you are having any mistakes to be rectified, which was not been rectified in your subsequent returns. You are having that final opportunity to make the corrections in this annual return. So in short, the persons who are required to submit annual return mandatorily is 2 crore. Above 2 crore only mandatorily you are required to submit. But even though your turnover is less than 2 crore, then also you can file the return if you are having some issues to be solved, some corrections to be made. Final return, annual return is the final opportunity. Due date for filing return is 31st of December. Before 31st of December, you would be required to submit this annual return in form number 9. Form number 9. Apart from this many persons, casual taxable person, input service distributor, non-resident taxable person, TDS, TCS, director, collector. This many persons need not submit annual returns. So this is what about annual return. So you have to distinct final return from that of annual return. Final return is after cancellation. Annual return is on annual basis. 31st of December on or before. Your turnover is more than 2 crore rupees and not required to be submitted by casual taxable person, IST, NRTP, TDS, TCS persons. And if your turnover is lower than 2 crore also, you can submit it. And this is the final opportunity to correct your mistakes. So this is what an annual return is. Any doubt till now? You may feel free to ask with regarding to annual return. Everybody, my gentle humble request, kindly do give a crisp idea about this annual return. All these things that I have mentioned already. Form is GSTR 9 for registered person, 9A. For obvious reason, the turnover would be lower than 2 crore. It is not mandatory. 9B not notified. CTP, ISD, NRTP, TDS, TCS persons not required to file this thing. Threshold limit is 2 crore. Lower than 2 crore also can file. Due date of filing is 31st of December. This many facts. Kindly do give a summarized report, summarized note on this topic, annual return and annual statement. Annual return. Now I am discussing. Annual statement would be discussed after this. 9C is the form, reconciliation form. Type about, give a report about this annual return. Yes, Sanjay, you are right. E-commerce operator would be required to submit both GSTR 1 in table 15 and this GSTR 8 also for their TCS compliances. Okay, everybody, can you type annual returns is for normal persons, GSTR 9 before 31st of December, not exceeding it's not 2.5 crore, it's 2 crore rupees. Somebody have typed 2.5 crore. The turnover limit is 2 crores. Turnover limit is 2 crore. Less than 2 crore also, you can file. It's not mandatory. Due date is 31st of December. So this is what about this GSTR 9 annual return. First return in GSTR 10, if you want to avail some credit on those capital goods, inputs, etc. at the time of registration, if you are converting from composition to this normal scheme and all, if you are eligible to avail credit under section 18, then you would be required to submit that GSTR 10, Sanjay. Now, I don't think no doubts. Along with this 9, GSTR 9, I was mentioning 2 crore is the limit. So more than 2 crore, only 9 is applicable. The answer is no. If your turnover is more than 5 crore, along with 9, you would be required to submit 9C also. So 9 along with 9C, you would be required to submit if your turnover is more than 5 crore. If your turnover is less than 5 crore but more than 2 crore, only 9 you would be required to submit. Less than 2 crore, no 9 nor 9C is mandatorily required to submit. These are all mandatorily requirement, even though you are not reaching those threshold limit. But if you want to submit, then you may continue to file those 9 as well as 9Cs. So everybody, kindly do type this threshold limits for 9 as well as 9C. Threshold limit only. Please do type. Less than 2 crore, you type in this way, less than 2 crore, no 9, no 9C. 2 to 5 crores, 9 applicable, not 9C. More than 5 crores, both 9 as well as 9C applicable. Everybody do type. more than 5 crore, both 9 and 9C are applicable. 2 crore to 5 crore, only 9 is applicable. Less than 2 crore, 9 and 9C not applicable. In that way, you have to type, please. Nine and 9C if it is more than 5 crore. 2 to 5, 9 applicable, not 9C. Everybody kindly do participate. Yes. Now, within which this annual certified, self-certified reconciliation, I was mentioning, if your turnover is more than 5 crore, then this 9C would be applicable. This person is not required to submit a reconciliation statement as usual. Casual taxable person, input service distributor, NRTP, TDS TCS persons would not be required to submit this 9C also. 9C also not required to get submitted by this much persons, this many persons. As if your 9 is. So what is the difference between 9 and 9C? I will tell you. My dear friends, kindly do listen. The difference in form, annual returns and annual statement or reconciliation statement. What is the difference? I will tell you. This annual return in form number 9 is an return having so many normal columns, and any sort of mistakes you can correct in this GSTR 9 I was mentioning. 9C is a reconciliation statement. Those figures that we have put in this returns, GSTR 1, GSTR 3B, etc. Those returns and the audited statements would be there, books would be there. Books of accounts, audited books of accounts and returns. If any differences are there, reconciliations required to be done. Then to rectify those gaps, those differences, you would be required to submit this GSTR 9C. So the difference between 9 and 9C is 9C you would be required to submit for reconciling those differences between this GSTR returns with that of books of accounts. So this is what 9C is. The forms and all I am not going to cover in these sessions. It's a comprehensive form. And only these forms as well as the applicability our syllabus covers. So I'm not going in depth to those points. Then the final return that we are going to trying to figure out is GSTR 11. GSTR 11 is the form required to be submitted by UIN person. UIN person, unique identification number, already we have mentioned. UN sort of agencies, UNESCO, UNICEF, IMF, etc. If they want to do some operations here in India, they would be required to take this UAN, and the form, final form that we are required to submit for this UAN is being prescribed in this GSTR 11 form. So this is what about various GSTR forms. Various forms we have discussed. So my gentle humble request to all my dear friends, you type all those returns that has been discussed till now. Already I have discussed GSTR 1, 1A, 2A, 2B, 3B, 4, 5, 7. We have discussed 8, 10, CMP 08, GSTR 10, 11. All those forms we have discussed. So everybody kindly do give me your sort of chart for all these returns till date that we have discussed in the last session as well as this session. I would tell you GSTR 1 is for a regular taxable person before 11th of next month. GSTR 1. GSTR 1A to rectify the mistake before filing 3B. 2A is a dynamic form of credits appearing. 2B is a static form, IMS way. GSTR 3B, the returns to be submitted within 20th of next month. GSTR 4 for composition person. So till now, various forms we were discussing up to GSTR 11. Everybody, 3 minutes I would give you. So many forms that you remember. Every form you try to type and give me a small description. 3 minutes I would give you. Please, please, please. Try it. So many forms that you know, that you remember. Kindly do type. Kindly do type. Hope you are all typing. GSTR 1 to GSTR 11. So many forms are there. 1A, 2A, 2B, 3B, 4, 5, 7. CMP 08, 9, 9C, 10, 11. All those forms we were discussing. Everybody, please do type. Nobody seems to be typing. I don't know whether any doubts on the same. Hope you're all typing. Otherwise, also I am moving. Why? Because so many things to be covered now. So now after discussing this many returns, I do think you had a better idea to face those returns, to file those returns and all. Try to have YouTube sort of videos to get more about this return submissions and all within prescribed time. It's quite impossible to cover up all those forms. So you try your homework to grab those returns on your own. Now slowly, yes, GG Simon, wonderful work. Almost all returns you have typed. Good work. I do think so many others are also typing, but due to paucity of time. Yes, Susmita Ghosh also. Wonderful work, Susmita Ghosh. Sanjay is also okay. Brilliant, brilliant, Sanjay. Rahimali also has done a good work. Okay, now I am moving. I'm trying to discuss something about ESI and EPF. So employee provident fund and employee state insurance. We are going to discuss EPF as well as ESI. So this is the last lap of your syllabus. Next 20-30 minutes we would be discussing on this EPF as well as ESI things. So you know EPF and ESI, employee related sort of payments. When EPF and ESI would be applicable, ESI would be applicable when your number of employees becomes more than 10 in number. More than 10 in number, ESI would be applicable. More than 20 in numbers, EPF would be applicable. EPF as well as ESI would be applicable. So this is the threshold limit of employees, wherein if you when you require to register for employee provident fund as well as employee stock, what do you call it? State insurance fund. So everybody do type EPF mandatory more than 10 employees. ESI more than or equal to 20 employees. Everybody do type, please. EPF, ESI, everybody do type. EPF more than 20 or equal to 20. ESI more than or equal to 10. For EPF as well as ESI, certain percentage of contribution as percentage of their salary would be required to be collected from employee, and certain percentage employer has to contribute. Both the employee contribution as well as employer contribution has to be paid on or before 15th of next month. Along with returns, you would be required to submit. Both under EPF and ESI, employer would contribute a percentage of salary and employee would contribute a percentage of salary. Both you would be required to pay to the exchequer, and you would be required to make the payment before 15th, and you would be required to submit the returns also. So this is what about the basics of EPF ESI. Now on to the details. First, with regarding to this PF, Provident Fund applicability 24-25, applicability under EPF and MP Act. (1952) and it is applicable. I was mentioning 20% or more, you would be required to do it. It includes factories in Schedule 1 industries and notified establishment. You have to take registration within 1 month from the date from where your total employees is more than 20% or equal to 20%. Once you have employed more than 20%, even though the number of employees goes below 20 in numbers, then also you would be required to keep your registration intact. Then, even though the PF is mandatory, if your total persons is more than 20, but any of those employees who are having salary more than 15,000 per month, 15,000 is to be computed by grossing basic salary as well as dearness allowance. So if your basic salary plus dearness allowance is more than 15,000, then employees can opt out voluntarily by giving a declaration. Suppose that, for example, if you are having 30 employees, PF registration is compulsory. But out of 30 employees, 8 employees are drawing more than 15,000 per month. That 8 employees, out of which 5 employees tells about this consent in order to avoid from PF proceeding. So in that way, they have given you the declaration. In that case, that 5 employees PF contribution as well as these procedures are not mandatory. So what about the remaining 22% whose salary is less than 15,000? If they wish to not to participate, whether they can do, the answer is no. If your salary is less than 15,000, you cannot opt in and opt out. There is no option at all. But in case wherein, if your total salary, basic salary plus DA is more than 50,000, 15,000 basic plus DA, then you are having that an option not to participate in the PF scheme proceedings. So this is what the basic limits are. Then for apprentice articles, CMA articles, etc. working in a firm, whether there has to be included, answer is no. Apprentice has to be excluded while calculating this 20 numbers and they are not eligible for PF facility. Then for international workers also, it is mandatory. Even though your total number of employees are less than 20, then also voluntarily you can participate under this scheme. So this is what the basic about PF applicability. Any doubt in this point? Kindly do feel free to ask, otherwise we would be moving on. Tell me yes or no. Shall we move on? Tell me yes. Any doubts? Give me those questions. Shall we move on? Yes. Okay. Now, how much has to be contributed? You see, 12% to be contributed by the employer, another 12% to be contributed by employee. In case of certain industries wherein the number of employees is less than 20, then 10% can be done with. Apart from this 12% employer contribution, 0.5% has to be paid as administration charges. Thereby, it would be 12.5% by employer and 12% by employee. So these are the contribution percentages. Out of this 12%, 3.67% would be devoted to EPF and 8.33 to employee pension scheme. So in this way, both employer and employee would be contributing. For a government establishment, instead of this PF Act, PF and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, this statutory pension, statutory provident fund scheme would be applicable. If the total number of employees number is less than 20, they would not be required to do it. And if your employees are all apprentice or all earns more than 15,000 and they have given opting out option, then they would not be required to get the registration. Then I was mentioning before 15th of next month, you would be required to submit that ECR. ECR is the form that you would be required to submit along with the PF amount. ECR is nothing but serial numbers, name of employees, their IDs along with the total amount that you are going to pay, etc. And as I mentioned, once you register, even though the total number of employees falls below the limit, then again you would be required to continue this scheme. So this is what about the peculiarities of the scheme of PF. Percentages and all. Any doubt you can ask. Otherwise, let me please move on. So how to register for ESIC and EPF? I'm trying to tell you. This is LIN that you want to register with. LIN is nothing but labor identification number. So that labor identification number, if you want to obtain, you would be required to go to this shramsuvidha.gov.in. There you can get multiple registration, PF registration, ESI registration, Contract Labor and Regulation Abolition Act registration, everything you can do there. So to get this LIN, you have to go to that shramsuvidha.gov.in. So if you get LIN, it is all EPF, ESI, everything would come under a single umbrella. It helps in unifying filing returns and inspection management. So how to do for this thing? You visit that return.shramsuvidha.gov.in. There you have to search the name, state and PF ESI code. Then you have to click on register. So here under LIN, by going through this website, you would be knowing how to register this ESIC as well as EPF. Is an integrated sort of website wherein you can do all these exercise. So this is the website. Shramsuvidha.gov.in is the website. So this is how it would appear if you go to this web portal. This is how it would be: establishment code, state, so this is how that LIN registration to be taken, labor identification number. So after entering this page, if you click on that submit, that would lead on to another window where an login or sign up sort of thing would appear. So this is how it would appear. So try to go through this Suvidha portal and try to click for this LIN number. All these basics we have already discussed. Now, generally we are moving on to ESIC provisions. So ESIC provisions, 10 or more already I have mentioned, would be required to get registered if you are using power in factory. 20% or more in case of non-power establishments. Mandatory ESI registration is required through ESIC portal, or LIN number also you can take with. Then we were mentioning 21,000 is that limit. In PF it was 15,000 rupees. In ESI it is 15,000, 21,000 the limit for opting out from this coverage of ESIC. And even though you are lower than 10, you can have a voluntary coverage also under ESI provision. So this is what the ESI provisions are all about. Then ESI contribution, exemptions and compliances. PF it was 12% and 12% each. Here it is 4% of gross wages to be paid for ESIC. 3.25% employer contribution and 0.75% is employee contribution. And already I have mentioned you 21,000 and above, and for PWD 25,000 and above, there is an option not to participate. And compliance deadlines, 15th of next month you have to make the payment. and on half yearly basis, April to September, 12th of November, October to March, 12th of May, you would be required to submit half yearly returns. So this is what the contribution percentages are. Now you both compare this PF and ESIC. I have already mentioned you the rates of contribution for ESIC, EPF, 25%, 12% employer, 12% employee, 0.5% administration. Here 4%, 3.25 and 0.75%. There more than 20 employees, here more than 10 employees or equal to or more than 10 and 20. 15,000 there, 21,000 here, both the dates 15th. There ECR, here half yearly returns. So everybody kindly do type the distinction, difference between those compliances of ESI as well as EPF. Quick, please do type. We are moving on to the last lap. Kindly do coordinate, kindly do cooperate, my dear friends. Give those various percentage of contributions by employer as well as employee under PF and ESI. Number of person limits to get registered, as well as this limits of amount contribution, this payment due dates, everything. Compare PF with that of ESI. Everybody, please. Okay, now hope you're all typing the differences. Hope you understand those things. Good. So many answers. Good. ESI already mentioned 10% or more in preceding 12 months. 21,000 the limit. For with disability, persons with disabilities, 25,000 per month. Contribution 3.25 employer, 0.75 employee. By contributing to this ESI, you would be getting covered yourself and with the family would be getting covered for medical insurance, medical sort of facilities, medical care for family, maternity benefit, sickness leave, disability compensation, and also dependent family to family members in case of employee death due to employment injury. Monthly requirement, payment due 15th of following month, returns filing half yearly basis, employee and wage details must be updated regularly on ESIC portal. So in this way, that ESI is there. By contributing to ESI, the employees as well as family would be getting various health benefits in those medical institutions and hospitals covered under ESIC scheme. Then for PF, if you have a contributed employee plus employer, it would be deposited in your PF account and you would be getting it at the time of retirement or any loan or a pre-maturity withdrawal is also available in special situations. So that amount you would be getting back, but ESIC amount you would not get it as money, but as medical facilities you would get. And already we were mentioning that ESIs as well as EPF registration you can do in Shram Suvidha portal. Sign up and using clear account creation, EPFO and ESIC both together you can get. Submitting establishment and factory license details. You have to upload PAN, bank details and digital signature. Once registered, would give the employee details. Then it is UAN, the number for PF. And ESI 17-digit unique number it would be. So Shram Suvidha already I have shown you the initial page. Now after registering, monthly basis you would be required to pay the tax 15th or before. Plus in EPF monthly ECR electronic challan cum return you have to submit. So it's an integrated form. Making the payment and submitting the return under PF it's an integrated form. You can make the payment as well as you can submit the returns using this ECR. So there the establishment name, the month, establishment ID, upload time, gross wages, everything would be appearing. Those contribution percentages also we were mentioning. All those things would appear in this ECR. So on monthly basis, you would be required to submit this payment cum return system under ECR. This is sample preview of ECR, challan cum return. So after making the payment, challan would appear. So 0.5% administration charge, 12% employer, 12% employee, all those things would appear and towards EPF how much it is, towards pension scheme 8.33, all those things would appear separately in your challan. So this challan would be generated. So this is what about the summary. Monthly EPF and semi-annually, half-yearly ESI. And that ECR as well as that half-yearly return we were discussing, the challan details, etc. We were showing as a sample. And fundamentally, if you have registered and if you have not paid the payment within 15th of next month, Under income tax, the employee contribution received would be deemed to be an income. So it is a must to make the payment within 15th of next month. Over and above the same, this registration has to be taken if the total number of persons employed, excluding those exceptions, apprentice and all we were mentioning, is more than 10 as well as more than 20 in respect to ESI as well as EPF respectively. And proper acquittance register labor sort of papers you have to maintain. All these things you would be required to do for the purpose of getting a better compliances under EPF as well as ESI. So this way, in a summarized way, I have discussed those provisions in EPF as well as ESI. Any doubts on these topics? You can feel free to ask. Now, this last 10 days or 20 hours, we were discussing so many things about e-filing things as well as we were discussing practical perspectives of various income tax, TDS and TCS provisions, some with regarding to labor law also we have discussed. So from the first class, we were discussing income tax provisions and we started discussing we started the discussion by mentioning about EPAN, how to take EPAN, electronic PAN, how to take, what is electronic PAN, that form 49, 49A for TDS registration we were discussing. What is a PAN, how to take it online, how to take it offline. Then how to get about with regarding to this income tax returns. We already discussed. So we started the session. I will share the PPT from first. First day we started from EPAN. So what is an EPAN? Importance of PAN. PAN card application online as well as offline. Online PAN application procedure we went on to discuss in this web portal. Then how to apply for PAN, 49A, 49WA, etc. How the columns would be for PAN. What are the details to be typed? How to make the payment for submission. Then this new PAN for foreign citizen under 49WA as well as 49A Aadhaar linked application procedure we were discussing. How to download this EPAN we have discussed. How to make changes and corrections in PAN also we went on to discuss with. Then for all the persons who require to submit income tax returns, company, firm, and any other persons whose income is more than basic limit we have. Apart from this list, persons would be also required to submit income tax return we were discussing. Then that technical section section number 139 dealing with the various submissions of return 139.1 mandatory return for company and partnership firm and others we were discussing. Due date for submitting the return 31st July, 31st October and 30th November. In case of loss, it has to be submitted on or before due date under 139.3 we were discussing. Then for late filing of income tax returns, belated returns, this would be done. How to done these things we were having a discussion. So within which this late fee of 1,000 and 5,000 rupees we were mentioning. And any mistakes in the return, you can revise that income tax return under 139.5. We have brushed through. Then for charitable institutions 139.4A you have to submit, and for political party 4B you have to submit. And in case where the department made any return to be defective, then that has to be rectified within 15 days. 139.9 we were discussing. Then we went down to discuss that updated return for the last 4 years. After making 25%, 50%, 60%, 70% extra, you submit that updated return. We were discussing on situations where an updated return cannot be filed. Also, we discussed this 25, 50, 60, 70 already I mentioned. Then we went down to discuss the income tax e-portal, wherein how to register your PAN step by step. We have discussed. After registering, how to log in. Also, we were mentioning. In that income tax web portal, we try to familiarize about AAS, TAS, 26AS, payment returns window, everything we try to know. Then various ITR forms, ITR 1 to ITR 7, and relevance of each and every form we were discussing. And who is eligible to file the respective forms we have discussed in deep. ITR 1. And the next day we went down to discuss how to file an ITR 1 both offline as well as online. Offline by downloading the Excel utility, and online web-based utility we discussed how to file it. Then apart from which various ancillary forms to be submitted. Form 10IEA, Form 10E, etc. How to file and all. We were discussing those ancillary forms. Then after submitting the returns, how to verify it, Aadhaar, OTP, etc. We went on to discuss how to verify those returns. Then in income tax web portal also, you discussed how to compute the income tax using the web portal itself, facility itself. Then we went on to discuss various TDS theory as well as those provisions, various forms in 24Q, 26Q, and 27Q. We were discussing along with payment of taxes. Therein CSI 5, how to download, how to create that RPU, how to download that RPU utility, everything we have discussed. Then how to submit that form in income tax web portal also we were discussing, and the various acknowledgements in 16, 16A, 16B we have discussed, and the consequences for not filing that returns also we were discussing. Then we came to discuss this GST provisions, GST identification number, threshold limit, 3 types of taxable persons, the registration process, how to register and all we were discussing. Now the department have came up with an easy way of registration. 3 days you can get a registration under the new scheme that has been introduced 3 days back from November 1. That facility is available. Various theories regarding this registration, who and all who are required to take the registration, everything we were discussing. Mandatory registration and the registration procedure, part 1, part 2, part A, part B, etc. we were discussing. And how to amend those returns we were discussing. Then various return submission, how to file GSTR 1, how to file GSTR B. Table wise we had discussed. How to amend the registration also we had. Then QRMP register submission, IFF, electronic ledgers, registers, payment of tax liability, QRMP schemes, everything we had discussed. Those ledgers as well as how to make the payment chronology, everything we were discussing. Then we went on to discuss with this GSTR 4 as well as GST CMP 08. Here. Then with regarding to this TDS, NRTP, everything we have discussed. First return, TCS, TDS, final return, annual return in 9 as well as 9C. We had discussed GSTR 11, and finally we went on to discuss with this PF as well as ESI. So that's how we discussed all these things for the last 10 days, 2 hours each sessions. So thank you all for your patient listening. Any doubts till now? Any practical clarifications required? You may feel free to ask. Over to you, my dear friends. Any doubts? You can ask here. Any clarifications required? You can tell. Over to you, my dear friends. Any doubt? Kindly do type quickly, and we can discuss. Thank you, G. Simon, for your compliments. PPT file I would share with BOS. They may be doing it. No assignment from my part, Divagar. Anything BOS would tell you. I do hope no more questions from your part. About those tests and all, kindly do contact BOS, Mr. Divagar, please. No doubts, we can stop our session. Thank you all once again for your patient listening. We would meet somewhere. Thanks a ton for your wholehearted support, your feedback, your cooperation while typing those things in question and answer box. Thanks a ton, BOS also. Thank you.